speaker, Eddie, who's going to share on Pure and Simple. Help me welcome Eddie.
Hi, everybody. My name's Eddie, and I am an addict.
Hi, Eddie.
And, my topic is that I don't think anybody came here for this topic, Tradition 7, 8, and 9. It's not real sexy, you know. I would have gladly shared on acceptance, faith, commitment, freedom, all that stuff, right? But we get that out of getting involved in service and working the steps. They say the steps will save us from, killing ourselves, and the traditions will protect us from killing each other, right? And it says the traditions are non-negotiable, right? So that means it is what it is. Whatever anybody else's idea of the traditions are, your understanding is your understanding, but it's not negotiable. We come in here and it talks about in Tradition 1, the unity. We got to be a part of unity, for this thing to happen. And it says in the beginning of our reading where it talks about, it isn't until we get involved with service that we start to realize that how important the traditions are, right? And we start to learn about the traditions. And I think these traditions are so unpopular that 10 people were asked to share on this today, and they all said no. And and then my buddy saw me here and said, "Would you like to share today?" I said, "Is it sexy?" He said, "No." So here we are, right? So I'll try and make it as sexy as I can, because this program saved my life, and the traditions help me protect. The traditions kind of are like, help me get along with other people, help me learn how to play well with others, right? Because you can sit in a business meeting, and disagree with people, and you want to talk about acceptance and freedom and all that stuff. Like, there's been times I've left business meetings, and I'm like, I need to make another fucking meeting, because I want to choke somebody. But, Tradition 7 talks about, our 7 tradition, right? And that we're fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions, and thank God for that, right? Because we talk about our primary purpose, right? Carrying the message to the addict who still suffers. Our primary purpose is to carry this message, right? And it also says money, property, and prestige will divert us from our primary purpose. Not just here in Narcotics Anonymous, but in our own personal life. And that's where, the traditions, are for us to protect ourselves, right, in the group. But if I take these traditions out into my life and into other relationships in my life, I can save some relationships, too, by working these traditions. By putting unity first. My common welfare comes first, but it depends on NA unity. Like, if I got a family unit, I got to bring that into that, And then it talks about our group purpose. One ultimate authority, a loving God, as He may express Himself in our group conscience, right? Everyone has an opinion. Nobody's bigger than anybody else. My disease is not impressed how long I've been clean, right? Matter of fact, the longer I stay clean, I start to think, I might have the best idea here because I've been around here and I've been through this and I've heard someone present this at a business meeting before and it didn't work. My job is to shut my fucking mouth and let that happen. Because what happened last time is different than what is happening now. Because the newcomer that comes in that has an idea, right, gets to share their idea, man. And just because this didn't work 5 times before and I've been there through all those times, we let that newcomer have their space. You know what I mean? And have their ideas, right? Because this program isn't about any big I's and little U's, man. This is about the we program. And that's what it's trying to teach us from Tradition 1, unity, right? So, the 7 tradition, where it talks about fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions, right? And on the group setting, we collect money to help pay rent, buy literature, we might buy coffee. Anything that's left over, usually, at least in my group and the groups I've been involved with, goes on to further carry the message in our service structure. And, where that can get tricky is, if we start thinking we're going to do some weird stuff with that money, right? The money, like it says, we pay rent, and we pay rent for a reason, right? Because we don't have churches and whoever we're renting from dictate to us what we're going to do. And if we didn't pay rent, that opens the door for them to tell us, hey, we'd like to put a Bible up on the table because you're in our facility and this is what we do here, So, for me, that 7 tradition, and more importantly, how do I practice that in my own life, right? I learned that here, And I really wanted to learn the traditions so I could effectively argue with people in my home group. That's really why I wanted to get involved in the traditions, because there was people arguing. I'm like, wanted to be a part of that, So like, I learned the traditions, and I'm a good arguer, so I can. And like you said, you can use this stuff to your advantage and the disadvantage of someone else, right? So it's about like keeping it clean and doing the right thing for the right reason. And then it talks about. We'll go over here to tradition 8. We'll keep this with. And this tradition even talks about this is self-explanatory, man. Talking about this stuff is really like I said, it's not real sexy. We should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. We might have regional offices or whatever that employ people, but Narcotics Anonymous doesn't rely on, and there's some professionals that come into Narcotics Anonymous. There's some people that come here, they get letters behind their name, and, but really when you walk through that door, some people like to, flex that. We don't care. We really don't care what you came in here with behind your name. What we care about is that an addict, any addict, right, is equal to anyone else. The newcomer with 4 days clean is really no different than the guy who's coming in and might have some letters behind his name. Like, we don't do that here. It talks about age, race, sexual identity, creed, religion, lack of religion, how much money you have, what you just did a half an hour ago. I wish it would say we really don't give a fuck, but they didn't put that in there. But we don't really care. And you'll hear people, I don't want to get into what people share. I'll try and keep my opinion out of that. But we really don't care. What we care about is our primary purpose and keeping that clean, carrying the message to the addict who still suffers. We collect this money so we can pay the rent, so we can, stand on our own feet. We don't rely on anybody else. It's interesting, like, we borrowed this program from another fellowship, right? The Mother Fellowship, whatever you want to call it, right? We say in our literature we're thankful to that fellowship. And in that fellowship, I looked up some of when that was starting, they had asked somebody for money so they could get started. And they had asked somebody that was probably one of the richest families in the world, right? The Rockefellers. And Rockefeller could have easily wrote a check for $5,000 or $10,000 to help that fellowship out, right? And he said, no, I don't think this would be effective for what you guys are trying to do, right? This is a really smart, intelligent guy. And thank God they didn't do that, because I don't know how that would have changed as we borrowed that program from them and them asking for money. We might have thought it would be okay as well. So, like, thank God that he was smart enough to see that we should be standing on our own 2 feet. How I put that into my own life, right? That, I was always... depending on everything outside of myself to fill my needs, right? I needed your help. I needed money from here, there, and everywhere else, right? As I grow in this process and stay clean and start to practice spiritual principles and learn about these traditions, I start to realize that I need to be fully self-supporting in my life, right? If I need more money, I need to work harder, right? I need to look at my finances because I learned how to do it here. It's kind of interesting that, like... everything I ever made, right, in my life, like when you get that little thing from the IRS and they tell you how much money you made in 1990 and 1985, Social Security. They tell you how much money you made. All that money went to drugs and alcohol, right? So here I am now, trying to navigate. I never was able to save money, right? Never had a checking account. The first check, right, because I got involved in service in Narcotics Anonymous and became the treasurer of the Philadelphia area, right? They gave me a checkbook. I had never written a check before, The first check I ever wrote was a Narcotics Anonymous check, right? I don't know if that means anything to anybody else, but I'm a thief as well. When I'm in active addiction, I don't make enough money. I got to do what I got to do, right? Now I'm the treasurer of the Philadelphia area of Narcotics Anonymous, and here I am. I was the assistant, co-treasurer, and then when she moved on, I was in the next position, right? So, we talk about traditions, and then here I am, and I got to call my sponsor, and I got to say, like, hey, man, like, they just gave me this checkbook. I got to take this money to the bank. I got to take this money home, right? It was like, I think at the time there was 37 groups. So at any given time, I was taking a couple $1,000s to the bank, and it was kind of interesting because Narcotics Anonymous gave me everything that I had up until that point. And I knew at that, I never stole a dime from Narcotics Anonymous, right? I took that money to the bank and I did what I was supposed to do. But I shared about it with my sponsor. I didn't even share about it in a group because I'm like, if I share about this at a meeting, they're going to take this position away from me, right? But I talked to my sponsor, right? And I was able to get clean with that area of my life, right? Because I was still taking stuff from work. I'm clean, and I was driving a truck. There was a case of toilet paper on there. At the end of the day, I drive by my house and drop the toilet paper off because they just gave me too much. So that must have been for me. That's just the way I thought. So, with that 7 tradition and how that trickled into my personal life, right, and how I handle finances today had a lot to do with Narcotics Anonymous and them trusting me with that position. When we talk about professionals, we don't really do professionals. We deal with the therapeutic value of one addict helping another, right? So that 8 tradition, that's kind of what I get out of that, without getting too deep in there. I mean, that tradition even says, like, this is self-explanatory. I would be bullshitting if I'm going to go on for 20 minutes talking about that, which I'm not. And, I just want to, I just got something here I wanted to do. And then we got Tradition 9. Tradition 9 being NA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible they serve. That's kind of like H&I. We have H&I committees. We have people that are in charge of that are the liaison between the prisons, hospitals, and institutions that do that. And we separate that stuff. We in our service structure. In the home group, that really doesn't really affect us. We got a GSR. We do that. We send the GSR up to our area service to take care of that business. A trusted servant, and that's what we have to remind ourselves that we are in this process. Like, we are trusted servants. Like I said, there's no one that has any hierarchy in this process. The newcomer, as a matter of fact, we point out that the newcomer is the most important person at any meeting, right? And that's kind of like with that primary purpose and reaching out to them. They're what's really important. Not our egos that get stroked in some way, shape or form, or taking something that we think we might have and flexing that. Like, that's not what recovery is about. Recovery is about, learning how to become a better person than I was yesterday, right? My ego and my pride will get me in trouble, on any given day. So I got to come in here and just remember who I am, right? Where I was at, the day before I came into Narcotics Anonymous and what that looked like. From the first time I picked up to the time I came into Narcotics Anonymous. And, I'm not going to share a whole bunch more on that because this, like the traditions, like the one thing I like about the traditions is when it talks about it's non-negotiable. You know what I mean? Like, we all have, like, we can have a God of our understanding, we can have traditions of our understanding, but when it comes to the group, there's really no way around, like, not working the traditions in the group, and when you think about it, any problem that can happen in a home group, there's a tradition to get into, even if it's just relying on the God of our understanding. And I talked to a buddy of mine who was involved in when the basic text our first literature was being written, and I was down at his house in Florida, and he was bringing out all this information, right, about how they would get together and how they would cut and paste, like the literature to write our basic text, and they had to go to editors, so they had to use a professional in that matter, but they didn't have a professional write our literature. Our literature is from addicts, for addicts. We wrote that basic text, and how they did it was just from groups submitting stuff, submitting ideas on different steps and everything. And thank God for, Alcoholics Anonymous that said we could use their steps, and we asked if we could change some of the stuff, and they said yes. So we ought to be really grateful for them to give us that, you know what I mean? And, it's kind of funny because they don't put we in front of the steps in that fellowship, And I'm glad, like, what we did with that is we put we in front of every step. Because this is a we program. Not saying that they're whatever they are, whatever they do over there, that's fine. But when I read the steps and it's about we, it's kind of taking I'm supposed to be, I truly believe today that the steps and traditions are an ego-deflating process, you know what I mean? And if your ego hasn't been deflated a little bit, then I don't know, you might have to go back and take a look. But but that's what this is all about, because I'm excluding myself from that power and looking for a power greater than me, turning that will over. I know it's not a step meeting, but this whole thing is steps and traditions. This whole thing is about how to live, without using, and how to become a better person. So, I don't know, man. I'm grateful that, I'm not grateful Danny came up to me and asked me to share, because I don't say no to Narcotics Anonymous. I don't say no to something that saved my life. And, and I thought I'm not going to be able to carry a message. That's all. It don't matter, right? What matters is that I show up here, and if NA says, help, my job is to help. I didn't come here to sit at this table. I came here to get away from a situation at home that I'm dealing with, and my God, right? And my friend Danny, who's a pain in the ass sometimes. He'll find that out if he listens to this tape. Or I'll tell him. I'll just tell him. I'm pretty honest. But but my God puts me where I'm supposed to be, man. And maybe this is like, and my man was talking about, this is a process of humility. Bottom line, like the one thing I get out of this, at the end game is freedom from active addiction. But along the way, if I don't find some humility, I'm probably not finding freedom. If I don't find some acceptance, I'm not finding freedom on the back end. So I got to find some acceptance. And I heard someone share that accepting myself right where I'm at right now today is humility. I'm not trying to fix, manage, or control any situation in my life. I'm accepting myself right where I'm at. And right where I'm at is I'm in Narcotics Anonymous. I'm clean. And if NA asks me to show up, I show up. If NA asks me to sit at the table and share some experience that I might have, then that's my job for today. The rest of my job is to stay clean the rest of the day and try not to fuck anything up really bad. Because then I got to, work on forgiveness, you know what I mean, and all that stuff. So, I don't know, man. I'm just real grateful to be here. I'm glad to be clean, and I love Narcotics Anonymous. That's all I got to share.
Thanks for sharing, man. Let's thank our speakers for sharing their experience. And we're going to close the meeting.